Change can be hard, making us rethink, adapt. When a crisis hits, who is there first? They are. It's their home, their present, and it will affect their future. When a crisis hits, local actors often dig with their bare hands, while international actors bring needed resources. But it's not enough. So why are true partnerships still so difficult to reach? Is the central role of local actors fully recognized? What would it take to make that happen? We all share the same world. We reach each other in a heartbeat. We learn from each other. Think, maybe that's where it starts. No more us or them, just we. Do we fully understand the central role of local actors? Maybe not entirely yet. The momentum is there. Let's not lose it. Let's become we.
Thank you. So the world wants to recognize the central place of local actors, as this video shows. And as the man in the video says, what would it take to make that happen? So are we offering the right solutions in terms of funding models? So, despite the grand bargain in the Charter for Change, there's a lack of direct funding. So 2021 saw the lowest direct funding to local actors in 5 years. That's only 1.2% of humanitarian funding, according to the Global Humanitarian Assistance Report. And then, like some of you said and mentioned in the Menti, the funding is quite inflexible. There's a heavy emphasis on compliance. There's lack of long-term funding, lack of involvement and decision-making of local actors in funding applications, and lack of capacity strengthening support. So those are some of the challenges. Then there's also some recent progress and innovations, including some that our panelists today have been involved in. So, we've seen some improved access to country-based pooled funds, increased inclusion of emergency response funds or quick response funds that allow local actors to respond, to kickstart a response quickly, access the money for that. There's an increased emphasis on networked approaches to LHL and networked approaches to funding. Increased access and inclusion of capacity building funds, and a stronger emphasis on learning to make these mechanisms more fit for purpose. And we see more and more fundraising training available for local actors, even though some, including Oxfam, I guess we could be better at advertising the training, despite, some recent efforts on that. So to discuss these matters further, I'd like to welcome our 3 panelists. So I'll start by introducing Dr. Carolyne Opinde, who's an award-winning global consultant, social innovator, and the founder and CEO of the NGO Whisper, a consulting business that provides technical support to non-governmental organizations across the globe. The NGO Whisper offers programs to build the capacity of small and medium-sized nonprofits for sustainability. It also runs a quarterly magazine and weekly podcast to showcase stories of people who are positively impacting their communities. Dr. Opinde is also a seasoned resource mobilization specialist, an evangelist for social entrepreneurship, and an international speaker who has shared the stage with some of the world's most renowned and respected figures. Welcome, Dr. Opinde. And I'd also like to welcome Sajid Raihan, who's been on the country management team for the START network programs in Bangladesh for the last 5 years. In his current role, he facilitates a platform of 47 local and international NGOs in Bangladesh to collectively influence the humanitarian ecosystem to make it more proactive and responsive towards at-risk communities and frontline humanitarian agencies. He has been working in the fields of DRR, climate change adaptation, localization, and grant management for more than 20 years. Welcome, Sajid.
Thank you, Lara.
And last but not least, we have Gard, Ntegyereize Benda, who is the founder and country director of World Voices Uganda, which is a human rights, access to justice, peace building, conflict resolution, and policy and advocacy NGO operating in Uganda. Gard is a firm promoter of community-based justice solutions for the most vulnerable and has assumed a leadership role in the national transitional justice process. He sits on the steering committee of the National Humanitarian Platform, and he coordinates the Western Uganda Humanitarian Platform. He's also a member of the Light Humanitarian Country Team, which provides strategic direction for collective interagency emergency response. And Gard was also nominated for the EU Human Rights Defenders Award in 2017. So we're very lucky to have the three of you here today. And it's such a pleasure to speak with you about innovative financing. So I'm going to get started with a question for our panelists. And so I'm just going to start with the person in the latest time zone. And I think that's Sajid in Bangladesh, because I think it's 6 p.m. for you, if my calculations are correct. And 3 p.m. in Uganda and 1 p.m. in the UK. So Sajid wins the latest person, the latest panelist. So what opportunities, good practices, and innovations do you see in advancing direct funding to local actors? Sajid, please go ahead.
Thank you, Lara. And thank you everyone who is there in the webinar from different parts of the world. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. So if I start with the opportunities, I think funding to local actors, the first and foremost I really wish to say is, recognizing and respecting the roles and the capabilities of the local actors, which is very, very important. The second point is about ensuring scopes and spaces from the local actors so that we learn together, grow together, and strengthen the systems and compliances, which is kind of, sometimes very, very important from a donor perspectives. It's also about giving the local actors the confidence that they can also do, and giving the scope to create evidence to support the confidence and to make it visible to the wider international community that the local organizations has the capability to make change happen. And finally, I think it's the opportunity is about creating an enabling environment for the local actors so that they have quality interaction with other stakeholders who are working in the humanitarian sector. In terms of the good practice that I see from direct funding to local actors is that if I tell from my experience, if they are part of the governance and the decision making, and which really help them to gain confidence, because for some of the local actors, maybe it's for the very first time they're having an opportunity even to review and mark an INGO proposal, if they are part of the project selection committees. And we have at times seen that the LNGO proposals are getting higher scorers than the international NGO ones. And then if a person from a local organizations, they are marking the proposals and seeing these as an evidence that even a local organization's proposal can score higher, it can certainly exert confidence among them. So while we talk about localization, it means that bringing decision making closer to the communities and which also means that we are ensuring more and more local actors are participating in those governance and decision making. In Start Fund Bangladesh, we have seen that 70% of the representation in the allocation and project selections are from the local actors. The second thing I think which is very, very important is treating the organizations equally. One of the good practice that we have in Start Fund Bangladesh as a pool funding mechanism, that we do not have a quota for local actors, which I mean, at times sounds that, okay, if I don't have a quota, then how can I ensure that minimum ceiling for the local organizations? But the experience for us, it proves opposite. By not having a quota.
Sajid, sorry to interrupt you. If you could just wrap it up in a couple seconds.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, by not having a quota, we have seen that, you know, in 2020, during the COVID time, 100% of the funding been accessed by the local organizations. And that proves that if given the scopes and confidence, you know, they can really make a change. In terms of the governance side, the last point I would really want to mention that the executive committee that we have that consists of the 13 members, and out of the 13 members, 7 are from local organizations and 6 are representing the international organizations. And the chair is from the local organizations, while the co-chair is from the international organizations. So that really represents a platform of 47 organizations, where 27 are from local and 20 are international organizations, which really help creating that enabling environment where local organizations can really make decisions, influence decisions, and can do the negotiation with the international actors. Over to you, Lara.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sajid. And now I'll hand it over to Dr. Opinde. What opportunities, good practices, and innovations do you see in advancing direct funding to local actors?
Thank you very much. My colleague Sajid has mentioned a lot. I would like to start with a slide that I shared. And it just shows channels of funding that is available and ways in which organizations can actually raise resources. It's the one, it's slide number 2. So if you look at those slides, there's one still remaining. So if you look at those slides, there's one still remaining. Yes, thank you. First and foremost, it's really important for local actors to understand channels that they can use to raise funds. These are not new, they exist, but you don't know what you don't know, and therefore, as a result, you're not able to utilize what can be available for you. So I wouldn't call this totally innovative, but in this case, you know, if I don't know something and you introduce me to it, it is innovative to me. And what I find many of local actors, especially humanitarian organizations, depending upon are grants, which is the middle one here. But there is really a lot of opportunities that local actors and organizations that at the grassroots level can utilize. And many of these ways and means of gaining resources or mobilizing resources are less tedious and less technical than grants. So the first one is a capital campaign. And I understand we come from countries or regions that are low resourced. However, in those countries, there are corporations, there are large organizations that you can collaborate with. And there's something someone once told me, gain resources, build relationships before you need them. Build relationships with corporations for capital campaigns and your corporate support before you need the resources. Why? Because as a humanitarian organization, you need to remember that disasters don't ask you, I will come tomorrow, so get ready today so that when I come, you will have the money. We need to have this already as of yesterday, but the disaster already happened. What does that mean? We need to utilize all these resources. And it's not to say that all these are available for you and you must use them. Pick whichever works best for you. Capital campaigns, corporate support, looking for corporate support, trickling money that's coming in every month. Digital fundraising. I worked with a number of smaller organizations in 2020 and 2021 during COVID to raise funds through social media. And some of them gain a lot of support. These organizations are not organizations that have so much resources in terms of having great teams of business development, technical specialists, and all that. It's just a community approach using things like Facebook, using storytelling approaches to tell your stories. And it's amazing how people from overseas were attracted to these small organizations that are operating in small villages to support their humanitarian efforts. And some of them raised up to $30,000 US, some of them not so much because they were starting out, but that helped them to keep afloat. Then there is direct mail. These are
Dr.
all,
Opinde,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt. If you could just wrap up in a couple of seconds, that would be great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Then there is direct mail and income. These are ways in which you can build relationships with already existing corporations and use their databases and use their employees or work through their employees to earn an income. Then, of course, there is membership campaigns, live stream. I've just jumped grants because we are very familiar with it, planned giving and special events. All these things are available and we can use them within our localities. And we don't need a lot of work to put into it because you are already on social media, for example, or WhatsApp and all that, and you can utilize these to gain support from communities, not just in your own community, but also overseas. For this question, I will only use this slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Opinde. Let's go over to Gard. What opportunities, good practices, and innovations do you see in advancing direct funding to local actors?
I think, in my opinion, I think direct funding is very, very crucial, simply because you see what we are talking about is about local leadership, and direct funding provides an opportunity for the local actors to take decisions, provide them an opportunity to be in charge of their own, processes. It gives them a chance to, to reduce on the issues of bureaucracies. It gives an opportunity for the local actors to intervene within the real time. And I think it also builds their capacity to be self-sustaining, because as you get the direct funding, then they are already getting used. They are developing systems. They are developing, capacity. Yes. Thank you very much.
There you are.
Yes.
Nice to see you.
Yes, good to see you too, Rara. Sorry for that, but I would say that it provides an opportunity to the local actors to use systems to build confidence, but also demonstrate that they can deliver. It gives them an opportunity to to find their niche, but also rediscover, discover themselves, discover the different aspects, but more important, enhance learning. And for me, that's the biggest point that we need to appreciate, that issues of building the capacity to take the lead, because Lara, you will agree with me and all those listening to us, that the COVID-19 was the very greatest example that manifested how critical local actors are. Because at that moment, everybody, including international human rights humanitarian actors, were running, they were running away for their dear lives. But guess what? We never got a total blackout. Why? Because the local actors were there. So I would think that the direct funding or granting to these local humanitarian actors provide them an opportunity to test themselves, to test the models and also come up with the models, but also build them in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the systems, and more importantly, it in terms of it enhances their ability to take local decisions, within time. Because see, just like Dr. Carol says, emergence is an unexpected, happening. You never say, you never plan for it. It never tells you that will come tomorrow, just say it. So, I mean, imagine you are looking at the, and all of you know about the comprehensiveness of the granting processes that, is available in the international system. And where you have to feel this, feel that, then go this. So really, does that really still be called an emergency response? So for me, I would think that if we want to realize practical solutions within the timeliness possible, then we need to support engagements. We need to support the idea of empowering the local actors to take charge of their own actions. And I think for me,
Gard, sorry, if you could just wrap up in a few seconds, that would be great.
Yes, I was saying that one doesn't necessarily mean that the local actor should be. There can be a way in which we can have a mutual partnership in which you define mandates practically. Then you say, you guys, I think for me, in terms of what we need to do, if we have these resources, can we channel them directly to the local actors who manage them, because they know the terrain, they know the environment, they know the context, they know each and everything, and then help them build their system and infrastructure that are necessary to support their localization agenda, to support them to be in charge, and so I think that can really help us even support innovation, just like I say, because sometimes innovation is come as you implement. So how are you able to quickly, within the shortest time possible, pick them as learning models and then take a decision to support them? And I think that is a very, very important aspect that we need to look at.
Thank you. Thank you, Gard. If this was a radio program, I would have started to play the little jingle music to, to pass to the next segment. So thank you very much to the three of you for your reflections on that question. So I'd like to turn it over to our participants and to see if there's any questions for our panelists. So you can put questions in the chat or raise your hand, and Ian's gonna monitor the chat for us. Do we have any questions?
No question yet, more insights, no? So yeah, so I think we can proceed to the next question before, and then maybe the participants are still thinking. Thanks.
Perfect. Yeah, let's just, we're warming up. Okay. So yeah, so let's move on to some more specific professional experiences from each of our panelists. They have years of experience working on these issues. So we'll just start again with Sajid. So you've pioneered direct funding to local actors. Can you share your journey with this panel, highlighting how this started, and what key lessons you learned?
Thank you. So in START Network, we realized that humanitarian architecture is mostly reactive. So we wait for a disaster to happen and then we respond. And we have seen that it takes time to channel funds, and by the time it reaches to communities, the communities have already suffered a lot for so many days. And then we have seen that there are so many transaction layers and transactional costs which consume time and resources and reduces the value for money. The decision-making spaces from need assessment to fund allocations to implementations are occupied mostly by global institutional donors, UN agencies, and NGOs. And small to under the radar disasters are neglected in the media, and it's not at all appealing to the donors. And as it incurred less life lost and less damages, so nobody gave an interest to those disasters. But then due to climate change, the small scale disasters are increasing, and then they are becoming uncertain, which means that more and more people are affected and leaving behind. So we see that we don't have any immediate life-saving interventions, and we do not see any immediate interventions to protect the dignity in terms of the crisis. We also realize that there exists a power imbalance among local and humanitarian actors who do not have equal power, who do not share their power. And we have seen that even among the local actors, there are power imbalances. Among the international organizations, there are imbalances. There are power imbalances between the NGO country offices and their offshore headquarters. And so these are the very backdrops from where the Start Fund Bangladesh started its journey, so that we bring the decision-making closer to the communities, closer to the local organizations. We preposition funding so that we can respond in a rapidly manner. We facilitate local organizations direct access and immediate access to the resources. We enhance the local leaders and actors' ownership and control over resources. We invest in strengthening the systems and the compliances so that they have the confidence to complement and to collaborate with other actors who are in the humanitarian sectors. The learning that we have are also, very compelling. The first learning is that fund only cannot automatically shift power from international to locals. The localization of aid, it requires changes in behavior and changes in the mindset of the local actors, of the international actors. The colonization of aid for a longer time, it created a certain kind of dependency, of the local actors towards the international actors. So how can we really make shift to that particular dependence? How we exert more confidence to the local organizations so that they can go for a negotiated process with the international actors, and they can create their own areas and own strength so that they can also compete with the international organizations. And they really need to shift from a foot soldier to an active, proactive participant in the decision making. And shifting the power or sharing the power, whichever way we frame it, it has to have a negotiated process based on principles of partnership, the Charter for Change, the core humanitarian standards, to name a few. But we have seen that also that at times there are reluctance even from local and international actors to proactively engage in those discussions, debates, and processes. One of the learning, which is very, very important, that in every discussion around localization, we see that we start from defining who is local, who is international, and we start dividing the local from the international. And then we start trying to do things in our own siloed way. So how can we also really shift from a very siloed way to a complementarity? Because it's a humanitarian ecosystem, and in an ecosystem, in different layers, different actors have their different responsibilities. So it's like common but differentiated responsibility towards localization. But it's more about realizing what my role as a local or international organizations in the localization agenda, and how the others respect my role, how the others recognize my role, and how we create spaces for the local actors so that they can play their role actively. Over to you, Lara.
Thank you, Sajid. Let's switch it over to Gard. So different question for you, Gard. Do you think we have enough policies in place that provide an enabling environment for local actors to access humanitarian resources?
Yes, I think that's a very challenging question. And I've maybe at some point would you, for me, in terms of the national level, of course, yes, yeah, we'll have good opportunities, in my opinion. The opportunities in the sense that, for instance, like in Uganda, we have this, for instance, CRRF, comprehensive response, a framework. That's an opportunity for us, for us to engage, you know, in aspects of like those organizations, actors that are working on issues and migrants to engage for support, so that then they're able to take the leadership. And also there's an opportunity that the policy in Uganda provides, for example, that every person, in order to work in the refugee settlement, for instance, you have to sign a memorandum of understanding with the government, the office of Prime Minister, which is in charge of you know, aspects. But of course, there are also other, you know, other frameworks like the National NGO Act, which provides for how local actors must be illegally or must operate. And of course, definitely at some point there has been some kind of limited space in terms of over-regulation against local actors. Like you have, you know, like especially some organizations that are doing advocacy. So, but I think for me, the most important thing is that there's not been any serious, you know, policy that ideally is specific in terms of providing conditions for localization agenda, in terms of where, for instance, if there was a policy that any international humanitarian actor must probably have a partnership with the local actor in the implementation of, you know, of humanitarian, you know, response action, and then they even go ahead to provide a quota, you know, a percentage in which actually provides for local content. I think that would be perfect. But as of now, I don't think that specifically there are adequate, you know, frameworks by them both. And I don't have any other than the discussion that we are having now, the Grand Bargain, the Charter for Change engagements, and others. They have no. Even for instance, what we are talking about. Otherwise, right now, wouldn't be discussing, because right now here in Uganda, we are discussing about how do we sustain the emergency response fund, for example, because it's a good model that we are implementing here in Uganda with support from Oxfam, US. You know, but if there were those policies that were adequate enough, then you would be sure that this was going to be a model that was going to be sustainable. And because there would be regulation, that will say, you know, guys, here there is already a model that's operating in Uganda and has been tested elsewhere, like in Bangladesh, Puerto Rico, and other places. And I think it would be good for you to invest in them. So I think for me, still, while they are here and there, there are opportunities, but I think there is need for a real well-focused and specific infrastructure that is in terms of policies and the legal institutional frameworks that support this localization agenda in terms of having a sustainable kind of the fund structure that can be used to support the local actors directly.
Thank you, Gard. So let's move on to Dr. Opinde. So your consulting business has helped a lot of NGOs access big grants. Can you tell us more about this and what advice you can give local actors to access better funding opportunities?
Thank you so much. I want to start by sharing one thing before you go to the slide. One of the most important things that I have learned as we do this work in the nonprofit sector, NGO sector, humanitarian sector is funding is earned. It is not guaranteed. We are doing great work in the community, but funding is earned. It is earned as a result of your the way your organization presents itself, the way your project presents itself. For many organizations and for many local actors, they just do not understand how grants or funding are released. And we start by educating them on how these processes start. And I will share with you 7 processes. It says it's a process, but for many organizations, they only get into the field or the playing field at number 4 when they are soliciting for bids. So step number 1, before any funding is released or any opportunity is announced, there's a project that is designed. And you as a local actor, you can have the opportunity to influence how that project or funding opportunity is designed. The second one is identification of requirements. The third one is when donors or any funder or any corporate organizations that's looking to give grants or funding opportunities out there conduct a market research. At any of these 3 points, you as a local actor, you have the power to influence what is put out there as a call for applications, call for proposals, response for applications, and so on. Not yet, don't go to the slide yet. Then the 4th step is where most of us show up. We show up after the design has been done, the requirements have been done, people have been asked, the market research has been conducted. Now, I want you to be so vigilant about how you engage with funders, about how you engage with partners and influence any funding before the funding instrument is released to the public. And there's a way in which you can do that. I will give an example. Large funders, especially US government and so on, they usually issue what they call requests for information. Many local actors don't respond to those requests for information because they just don't know where to get them. And this is one of the things that we teach our local nonprofits. I don't work with big nonprofits, I work with local actors. So we teach them how you can respond to this. Just to give you an example, one of the organizations we worked with in Honduras responded to a request for information that was last year. And some of these things, they don't come back to you immediately, but that is a way of showcasing what you are doing at the community level, the local level. You are planting your seeds. And when these requests for applications come through, when you're responding to the bids, the notice for funding opportunities or any call for applications, what you contributed or what local actors contributed is included in there. We always say nothing for us without us, but when those opportunities are put out there, we don't know where to find them. And that is why we find ourselves not written in some of these documents. Then there is the evaluation, which is number 5, negotiation process and making the award. Many local actors don't know that you can actually challenge a donor when they say your application is not up to par. You can challenge them. You can engage them in conversation. For many local actors, once you are told, no, you're not successful, you step back and you say, okay, we'll wait next year. You're not engaging in these discussions to say, if we were not right, but we are saving lives, we are doing this, what is it that we did wrong? Can you train us? Can you build us? We are ready to bring 10 other organizations like us, so we can build, you can build our capacity, because you want to do good, you want to give us funding so we can do good. You are negotiating not as a receiver, but as someone who has a seat at the table. And you have to be assertive about this. We say, if there's no seat for you created at the table, come with your own chair and sit at the table. And that's how you want to do it. And yes, I know it sounds very assertive, and for some people it sounds very combative, but you have to make yourself known for them to see you. I will walk through 8 steps very quickly in about 2 minutes, just to share with you what I will call grant readiness. Some people call them funding readiness process. For you to receive these grants, they want to entrust you with it. You want to earn it because it is not guaranteed. You have to prepare yourself. Very quickly, if we go to slide number 2, I would like to make it more visual because it's easier for some people to remember. No, it's okay. It's okay if it's not part of this. I updated it. It's fine. That's fine. I want to share with you. Just 8 things. 8 things. No, not that slide. That's my last question. So the first thing is legal requirements. The second thing is technical capacity. The third thing is financial capacity. Number 4, human resource capacity. I know I mentioned technical expertise, but I also want to emphasize on the human resource capacity. Local actors, many local actors have the human resource, but they are not capacitated. How can you be capacitated? Find opportunities. Ask these donors. Ask these funders who are giving you grants, and they may be saying you don't have the capacity. Ask them to bring your capacity to the level where they can fund you. And many I've come to find out they're very reasonable. When you come to a discussion and you say, we've been applying for funding from you and we're not getting, you say we don't have the legal requirements, the technical capacity, the financial capacity, the human capacity, the human resource capacity to do this. How can we get there? Have a discussion. And number 5, we're talking about partnerships and networks. Partnerships and networks, and many of you here belong to partnerships and networks. Partnerships and networks are strong because when you come as a group, you are stronger than when you come as an individual organization. And when you are influencing policy as a group, as an Pacific Asian group, East African group, the group from the Horn of Africa. These are nonprofits, local actors working in different communities. You are stronger. Number 6 is moral values and ethics. This is very important because one of the most important things that donors always look for when they're giving funding is stewardship. Do you have systems and processes in place to ensure that whatever is given to you, whatever has been entrusted to you, that you have values and ethics that govern that? Because that's one of the things, understanding that these are resources that are earned is not a guarantee. Number 7 is programmatic requirements. And lastly is the strategic direction. For many organizations, these sound very technical. And these are ways in which we help nonprofits. We help smaller organizations, community-based organizations, self-help groups, humanitarian local actors to position themselves for success. And this is what we call the funding readiness method or grant readiness method. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Opinde. And sorry we weren't able to share that PowerPoint. I'm assuming we'll be able to share it in
I will send the slide to you.
Perfect.
I will send the slide to you. Thank you.
Great. I think Ian wrote out 8 things to keep in mind in the chat. So if people are looking for
I can copy them and just paste them in the chat as well.
Perfect. Great. Because that was great advice.
So Lara, I just want to call your attention. There are a few questions in the Q&A tab. Do we have time, or do you want to go to? We're moving to an open forum, right?
Well, maybe we could. I mean, Yeah, let's do 2 questions, and then just let's try to keep it to like 5 minutes.
Okay, so I'm going to consolidate Dowd and Peterson's question because they are related. So there's a lot of interest on how do you do membership campaigns, capital campaigns, and digital fundraising. No, so they would like to hear more about this. I think from Dr. Opinde, and then the other attendees asking, and I think this is very much for Sajid and for Gard. There's a lot of competition among local actors, no? And sometimes it becomes homogeneous. This local actor that gets funding, become visible, will always become visible, and then the more the local actors speak the same language, the more advocacy and influencing is enhanced to attract more funding. So how do you also level the playing field even among local actors, no? Who are not maybe able to be visible, but they're actually maybe startups or doing the same work as the more visible, popular national actors. Over to you. Thank you, Lara.
Okay, go ahead, Gard.
Okay.
And if you could be succinct, so we
Okay.
can.
No, indeed, that's a very, very serious observation, because it's one of the things that has hindered actually the local actors from, I mean, maybe let me put it like this. I think we have, as local actors also, I think we have accepted to be blackmailed. And why? It's because we have failed to come up with a collective, voice through strengthened synergy building, in which mutual interests are discussed and agreed, consensus is built, and then we know this is how we are moving forward. I think the better we build synergies and the better we build a collective voice, the better we move together to influence the terrain, the better for us. Now, I think now what we are doing, and that's why we are promoting the platforms. For instance, right now we have what we call in the Western Uganda platform, and in fact, recently we're also discussing on how to sort of like come up with a national reflection for the different regional platforms, so that then we're able to begin building a concerted effort where we should bring different, build different issues, subnational issues, and then combine together, and then we be able to inform the national and international agenda. And I think for me, what we need to do is if we build and strengthen this regional platform, ensure that all organizations, all the local actors at different levels are able to learn from each other, are able to support each other, even capacity building, even what Dr. Carol was talking about. Some of these models can, because see, we can learn from others, from our colleagues. For instance, say, okay, we have been assessed in these areas and we have found ourselves lucky. Where can there be an organization that can provide support so that we build capacity for each other? And as such, then we should be able to prepare ourselves, even where we want to go it alone, then you are sure you go it alone. But the most important also is that if there was a mechanism where we know that every intervention matters, and then we are taking decisions as local actors rather than beginning to compete for international funders, for those grants, and we know that, okay, there is a specific funding, infrastructure where everyone can go and access funding for their small contribution. I am sure, I think there can be, we can be able to build consensus, and we shall then, begin now to support each other at every level, other than competing, because competition is the one that has been creating a problem. So at the end of the day, we are competing for resources, you are competing those, and you think that when you sabotage the other one, that's when you are going to get this funding. But also some of the competition has been created by the international funders, where everyone says, for me, I'm going with the other one. For me, I'm going with the other one. The moment you begin rating things, And at some point, I think we also need to ensure that we are able to look at the practical part of what people are doing, instead of just looking at ticking the boxes. Do you have this? Yes, I have. Do you have that? Yes, I have. You know, without actually looking at the value contribution that these local actors are making, regardless of their level of growth. Thank you.
Thanks, Gard. Sajid, Dr. Opinde, anyone want to offer a few reflections?
Okay, I can go next after the Gard. I think, you know, why the competition among local actors, that's very important to understand before we say how we create a level playing field. So why the competition? One of the big reason for the competition is that you know, we are not realizing the strength of unity. And because there are scarcity of resources, so we are trying to satisfy our counterparts like NGOs or donors in our own way, and which is why at times, you know, giving up to the kind of demands and compliances they are looking for. And in very few cases, we see that there are united demands and united voices towards the international agencies and the international donors. So we really need to look for platforms where we can come together and we can raise our voice. It is a negotiated process, and that process needs to be informed, and that process needs to be led by real leadership. How we make sure that as local organizations, we are, you know, taking our confidence and keeping our confidence to that particular leadership. So, you know, coming under a leadership, raising a united voice, making informed choices are very, very important. And localization cannot happen if we depend on only the international resources. So how we diversify our resources, and when we say resources, it is not only fund. So how we really ensure that we are recognizing our diversity, because local organizations are not unilinear entity. Different organizations have different shapes, vision, mission, capacities. So how we really make sure that we recognize those as a diversity, and we recognize diversity as a power. So how the local organizations can complement each other, and what are the collaborative advantage when we local organizations can come together as one piece. I think that's very, very important if we really wish to, you know, that have a very level playing field. Level playing field doesn't mean that there is $100 and 10 organization is having $10 each. Level playing field is that every 10 organization are accessing that $100 according to their capacity, and the other 9 organizations are respecting the capacity of that particular organization. So how much I will be accessing, how much we will be sharing. So we have the respect towards the diversity and the capacity of the organization. So instead of looking externally, I think we need to look internally first, whether we recognize the diversity, whether we respect the diversity, whether we are creating spaces for the smaller organizations to come on the platform, and also creating spaces for their leadership. Thank you.
Thanks, Sajid. Dr. Opinde, over to you if you want to offer any reflections.
Thank you. There's a question that was asked about special events, capital campaigns, and digital fundraising, as well as membership. These are all ways in which local communities can contribute to your work. As Sajid rightfully said, fundraising or resource mobilization is not just about finances, but many of us are blinded and we think it's only about finances. I just want to let you know today that there are 3 ways in which you can raise resources. One is money, which we all know. Another one is commodity that you need. It could be food, it could be clothing, it could be whatever you need. And number 3 is in-kind or expertise of people in the local community and also from international community. And many local actors do not really value the commodities and the expertise that they have. Many of them are only looking for money. And what I always tell our organizations that we work with at the local community is, when you are organizing for your fundraiser, there's always that accountant. There's someone with a CPA. There's someone with a law degree somewhere in the community. In every community, there's someone you'll find who has studied something. There's an engineer, there is someone. How about you bring them on board and help you support the work that you are doing? They might not have the money because they're in a community that has faced disaster, but they have intellect, they have insight on how to do something, on how to build something, which if you were to hire someone, you don't even have the budget to pay that person. So before we go out there looking for funding to pay high salaries, how about we utilize the local resources that we have? It's not to say that we are underpaying our people, but in times of disaster, where you need all hands on deck, this is a way in which you can get into a form of agreement with local communities and work with the local communities and ensure that your organization is built up as we wait for the grants to come through. Because as we all know, sometimes they take 6 to 9 months. Now, speaking of capital campaigns, special events, digital fundraising, and membership campaigns, these are all avenues. We don't have time to go through all this, but I am available, and at the NGO Whisperer, every month we offer 2-hour free masterclasses for nonprofits, for humanitarians to come and learn. These are for free. We also run 6-month free fellowship program, full scholarship for local actors. Please get in touch with us, because I have a passion for local actors who are doing an amazing job and cannot afford to pay for these expensive courses, and we train them, and everything is done virtually. Please reach out to me and let me see if I can organize something for local communities, bring a team together, and we do that. Also, at the end of this year, in November 3rd and 4th, we have a summit, which I've made announcement. It's also a way of teaching and helping the population that I'm so passionate about, local actors, to build their capacity. We will bring all sorts of people to come and pour into you, but you have to come. You have to be present. Please get in touch with me and let's help you to get there. We have seen some successes in the past, and if those organizations could do it, so can you. So get in touch with us. Let us work together. I believe in partnership. I believe in empowering local partners.
Great. Thank you to the three of you. Let's see, Ian, do we have any outstanding questions in the chat or?
So none for the moment.
Okay. Let's see. So I'm going to pose a question to each of you, and if you could use this round of questions to also offer some words of conclusion for today. So let's just, since Dr. Opinde, you just closed the previous round of questions, let's start with you. So in terms of trends that provide sustainable solutions and are fundable, in which areas of work and innovation do you think local actors, including women's groups and non-binary groups, should focus on?
Thank you. One of the most critical things that I help nonprofits, especially smaller organizations that work with key populations or women's group, majority of the nonprofits and social enterprises that I work with actually serve women and girls, and a smaller portion non-binary groups. One of the things that I always let people know is, as you come wherever you go or wherever you present yourself, move away from linear methods, move away from thinking this is how we have done it and so it shall be. No, let's be open to adopting what I'm calling a systemic approach to transformation. What does that mean? It means that you look at everything that is happening and you are flexible. You are flexible to change any of those things for the good of the work that you do. 5 ways I want to share with you. Number 1, local actors, we need public-private partnership. Number 2, we need to think about sustainable resources or diversifying sources of funding so that we are not just waiting for international aid. Why? Because international aid takes time, needs expertise that sometimes we don't have. And after waiting for 9 months or whatever the time, you are told you are not successful. Number 3, we need to co-create, co-develop things. I've worked with organizations where founders of 2 organizations working in the same town don't speak to each other because they consider themselves enemies, because this person got a grant and the other one didn't, and now you don't talk to each other. I always say collaborate, work together. Why? There's a reason why you coexist in that community. One of you can do something better than the other. How about you sub-grant to that other organization and make a difference in the community? So that's one of the things, co-creation, co-developing. Number 4, I just have 5 points for this one. Adopting transformational leadership. When the founder and the leaders of the organization are not making headway, make room for others to step up and lead the organization. Because sometimes we are so tied to our old ways of doing things that we don't think that there are other people who can make it better. Let's be open. Even if it's that organization that got funding and you were denied, allow them to teach you how to do this, transformational leadership. And lastly, let's learn to evaluate our input towards systemic transformation continuously. If anything does not work, let's question it and then change it quickly. And this is something that I always encourage leaders. Let's learn to do business in new ways or adopt new ways of doing business. And if we fail, let's fail faster in order to get to where we want. If you have 1 minute, allow me to share that slide, because this is a new way of funding work that I would like to present to you as a thought-provoking thing. It's called social impact bond. If you can make it larger. Now, social impact bond has 4 actors. There's the investor, which is usually a corporation, a corporate organization. That's why I said you need to build relationships with them. There is the commissioner, who is usually the government or a department in the government or a ministry that is aligned to the work that you do. There is the service provider. The service provider are local actors. And then there is the target population. How does money flow in this system? The investor, which is a corporation, invest capital, which is money, to a service provider, which is a local actor. The local actor serves the target population or provides support to the community in ways by way of service or products. And then the government, in this type of setting, the government, who is the commissioner, continuously checks that the desired outcomes have been achieved. And then the government pays the investor. Or sometimes the investor says, no, I don't want to be paid by the government, but I want to make sure that the government is involved in ensuring that this has changed. This is a model that was first implemented in 2010 here in the UK, and there are so many social impact bonds. I personally am looking forward to building such a relationship for local actors across the globe by building this type of system, this type of new way of funding work. And this is powerful because in your countries, no matter which country you are, where there are disasters, there are people making a profit. somebody's making a profit in your country, that person, that company can be the investor. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Opinde. Let's move on to Gard. If you could answer this question and offer some words of conclusion. So many changes happened in the last 2 years due to COVID-19, climate change and calls for decolonization of aid. Where do you see your organization and networks 5 years from now? Don't forget to unmute yourself, Gard.
Yes, I didn't hear the last. I didn't hear the last words. The last.
Okay, let me just repeat the whole question. So many changes happened in the last 2 years due to COVID, climate change, and calls for decolonization of aid. So where do you see your organization and network 5 years from now?
Yeah, I think really I see lots of changes, definitely, and because really I think all those have been opportunities, and I think COVID-19, climate. Can you hear me? Yes, COVID-19, climate change, the issues of energy transition, issues of you know, the nature of conflicts that we are seeing that around the world. And by the way, even the war in Ukraine, by the way, even the war in Ukraine, I think those have all impacted on the fundamental aspects that we need to look at. And I think one of them, which we have already agreed on, is the demystification. I think the aspect of master-slave relationship, has been decoined in a sense that now at least you can see that at least now the capacity of the local actors to act and take leadership has been certified. That now I think we need to look at what kind of capacity do we need to give them, not necessarily the capacity, the other aspect where we say, they don't have the capacity to do this and that. No, I think now we need to be at the discussion should be, okay, what kind of support do you need to, to continue putting, how do I put it? To actually to go ahead, take leadership in some of the roles, just like Sajid was saying. I think that there is going to be the shift of roles, definitely. And the shift of roles has been manifested by the different, the show of ability, the capability to continue surviving, even when ideally the international human rights actors are not there. And then I think we also see, I think some of the models that are being, piloted, for example, like emergency response fund. For me, I see that right now it is 40,000. I see when the fund has growing to maybe $5 million US, because I know that it is already a total demonstration that ideally the local actors can manage their funding facilities, they can run them, they can provide affordable and accessible infrastructure for access to resources. But I think for me, I think we also need to begin engaging, just like Doctor was saying. I think we also see ourselves trying to have a discussion on how to tap into the untapped sources of funding, like the private capital, but also engaging on with the already existing funders on the issues of demystifying the aspects of admin cost and sustainability. Because for me, what we've been discussing also around here is, why do you ask the partners to demonstrate how they are going to sustain themselves, but you cannot, for instance, support social enterprises? I mean, you know that when the project comes, it is emergency. They won't spend on food and non-food items in providing relief. And then you need to look at when you are not there, how are these organizations, local actors going to sustain themselves? So the more we begin thinking of supporting social enterprises, the better. But also engaging governments to ensure that they look at social enterprises as not as business entities. There is two, we need to begin engaging with the funders, the traditional and the other emerging funders, on the issue of operational costs. I think we need to appreciate that operational costs, admin costs should be part and parcel of programming. They are supposed to be a program costs simply because they are part and parcel of project implementation. Lastly, should be the issue of issue of governance, and I think Dr. Carol talked about the issue of transformative leadership, the issues of improving governance and accountability. I think those are issues that we need to discuss, and I think we need to look at how do you ensure that when you are supporting a program, how do you build the capacity of this organization to outgrow, but also support issues like boards, the policy engagements, systems, strengthening, and so forth and so on. So I'm thinking that in the next 5 years, I think with the situation, with the tide would have shifted, but also not shifting that the local actors should be fighting with international actors, but rather a mutual partnership. So I see a little bit more mutual partnership where all of us are supporting each other. Because I also think that idea, even though actors actually have the capacity to actually support and help the international actors, because after all, the local actors know the terrain, they know the context, and besides, they have even gone to the same schools, by the way. So I think at some point, I see the tide changing, and so I have really, I am very optimistic, and I think there are more emerging opportunities for us to collaborate with the view of facilitating the local actors to take leadership in decision-making processes. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Gard. So let's move on to Sajid. Sajid, in which two areas local actors should strengthen their capacity in terms of resource mobilization?
There is no very specific definitive answer to that. So I will be approaching this particular question maybe more from a philosophical perspective. The first idea, I think, is about understanding power and analyzing the power. So who are powerful, in which part of the power and system you belong to, and how you create those linkages and networks with different power structures, and how we benefit from the power, how you prepare yourself to negotiate with the different power systems and structures. So that's very, very important. The second thing is that as an organization, we need to be risk-facing, not risk-aversive. We really need to decide ourselves whether we wish to continue as a foot soldier or we wish to be a game changer. Do we wish to have a transformation in our organization? And in order to have the transformation, what kind of system I do need to have in my organization? So when we talk about system, it's not always a very heavy system like an INGO. It's more about having a system which is in orderly manner and that is transparent, informed, proactive, accountable to communities, and that really help you to transform towards a more quality agency. It can be small, but it's about quality. It's not just about quantity and raising more money and then utilizing more money. The third thing is, I think it's very, very important that you need to think yourself as part of a system, because we are part of the system. We are not just, work in silos. So we are a networked entity We are a partnership entity, we are a membership entity. So how I increase my identity, how I increase my entity as an organization. Am I networked with so many other organizations and network? Do I have diversity in partnership, or I'm just partnering with very similar type of organization? So how I create the diversity of partnership, I think that's very, very important. And finally, when we are talking about resource mobilization, it is not just about money. So if I am mobilizing volunteers in my community, that is also a resource mobilization. If I am pre-selecting vendors who will be really handy in terms of a crisis, I'm really kind of mobilizing my resources. The final word from my side, I will be stopping with a very small reference to a kind of, it's an evidence and it's a good practice. I started with it. So I was talking about, the non-quota. So where we really exposed the local organization to certain competition. So where they were competing with NGOs. At the very initial stage, all the local NGOs were saying that, okay, why not we have a quota, so that it at least ensured that we have certain access to certain limit of funding. But then when we saw that when we gave them a kind of enabling environment and created that atmosphere, while there is the local organizations giving them the kind of information capacity and the required assistance, they were accessing more and more of the funding. But then, by competing with the NGOs, they also realized that, okay, because when they are part of the project selection committee and they're reviewing the project proposal of an NGO, they also realize that, okay, what are the areas where I really need to kind of become more smarter in terms of presenting myself? What are the areas which is a kind of gap for me where I can really help? It was also helping them to come up with consortium. So they were building consortiums where, different NGOs coming up with their different capacity. And then that consortium at times became more powerful than NGO consortium, because then these organizations, they're more close to the community, they have better access to the community, and they have better confidence. The community has better confidence on them. So I really rely on this very innate power of local organization. They have power. What is not there is that they do not realize at times that they have power. The second thing is that they have power, but then sometimes they don't realize that by working in silos and not coming together, they are in fact not creating the collaborative advantage effect impact in the community, and also creating a better environment for the donors to make decision that, okay, I'm not just funding a particular agency, I'm funding a united platform who are coming up with their diverse capacities and working with the communities and can really bring social systematic change at the community level. So that realization is very, very important. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sajid. Yeah, the importance of collaboration. So I'm going to turn it over to Ian to give us a brief synthesis about, the discussion today. So Ian, do you want to come in?
Thank you so much. And to the audience, if you can give us an extension of 5 minutes, because we have a few announcements to make after this. I hope that's okay. Okay, it's very difficult to synthesize this event or this session because I have so many quotable quotes. Let me start with Sajid's power analysis. So I like what he said about this summit is about practical approaches for local humanitarian actors to be sustainable and just for the humanitarian system. And I was struck by what he said about, it's not about funding at the end of the day, it's about power. The power that you have that emanates from the power to assist your communities. And assisting your communities would require resources. And that might be money, like what Dr. Opinde was saying, it can be money, commodities, or expertise that are available locally, or if it's not available locally, you have to get it elsewhere, then you leverage whatever existing power you have in your locality to be able to access that. And that requires a lot of connections, no? Connections, looking outside, not just within your community, but making sure that the focal point is your community. And that is where Gard was very on point on this one when he said in during COVID-19, when everything else went to like fell apart, there was no blackout in their communities. The community kept on moving. They were able to leverage resources within their communities, even if it was not enough. But they were the frontliners. They would be the first and the last responders in this case. But I think what Sajid was saying also was, this is the moment with the grand bargain, the Charter for Change, and many other frameworks that we have. How do we, because we're still, all of us, both the local actors and the international actors, have this colonization of aid. No, we all have to get that out of our system. Like as a local actor, I have to start thinking that I am the foot soldier. As the donor, or as the intermediary, as the international actor, as Oxfam, I have to stop thinking I am the donor here. I just give you this and you implement my project. So I think that requires a shift, a mind shift for both sides, for all of us in the system. So we will have a systemic change. It cannot be that the local actors alone are changing, or some parts of the global community or the international communities are changing. It has to shift, all of us, no, for us to be in this together. And the thing is, as Sajid was also pointing out, there's so many disasters, climate change impacts, no? Small-scale disasters are becoming everyday disasters, and they become cumulative, and they would require a lot of resources. So I think we have a lot of practical insights from Dr. Opinde. I've actually heard new things that I haven't heard before, and I would also want to explore those other types of funding and resource mobilization, like come with your own chair. I really like that. Come with your own chair. Ask your evaluators, why didn't we succeed in this fundraising? And at the same time, Gard was saying that let's not just tick boxes, no? Like, okay, they have this, they have this, they have that. That's not how we will survive this together, how we will thrive together as a community. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you to our moderator, Lara, for keeping us moving and all. And thank you to the audience. As we said, we will be providing a post-synthesis document for this one. And we really invest on this because we want this to be a learning document that moves, that is not just a shell filler, but something that you can really use. So watch out for that. Over to you, Lara. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. So I'd just like to thank, Dr. Opinde, Gard, and Sajid for their time today and their invaluable reflections. It was such an interesting conversation. I will have to listen to the recording, as being a moderator, you don't always absorb all the information, but it was great to have that little synthesis, Ian. So as Ian was mentioning earlier, there's going to be a closing program in about 30 minutes. So if you could either stay on or reconnect in 30 minutes, I think it'd be great for everyone who's attended this summit to be able to get some parting information and just celebrate all the amazing work that local actors do every day. So thank you, everyone.
And we are using the same link. So go do your bio break, come back. And this is not a typical closing ceremony. This is a closing reflection. And we would invite everyone's insight and celebration, because this summit is organized by local actors, by DEPROS Nepal and CEFORD Uganda and all the other local actors in the LHO network. We would really want to hear their insights about how they feel about this and everything else. So please join us if you can. Thank you.